Hey guys, it's Family Tech 101 and this is a new video. I thought I would show you my phone collection on a couple of iPods that I have. I have about 20 phones and 4 iPods I believe, and I started this collection and maybe a couple of years ago. So don't have a lot of strange phones as you can see here, and I will go through by one. Just the main, I would say main companies: Apple, Samsung, and Google as well. Well, before they had the Pixels, that is, well, the Nexus lineup. So enjoy this short video. Hopefully you learn more about phones, and I'll let you know which one is my first smartphone that I got about 10 years ago, I believe. Alright, so let's get started. This is a shot of them, all turned on, as you can see. Some cool OSs. I'm gonna go through them one by one and explain like what OS they have and what version of the firmware they're running. Alright, so let's do this. So I'll start with this iPod. This iPod is the iPod mini, sorry, Ipod Nano, 3rd generation. And as you can see, it's like in a mint condition. Unfortunately, the battery on this guy is sort of dead. As you can see, so reflective, like you can actually, it's basically like a mirror. Most of them got scratched up. If you ever used one, you'd know it scratches up super easy, as I can show you, and I have another example and you'll see the difference. So for example, I have the bigger iPod over here. This is the 5th generation iPod. This is the 30 gigabyte model. As you can see the difference in between the backs. Both of them will have the same back, it's just this one is scratched up, and even this one considered clean because of the, well, sort of the scratches is not as much on it. And maybe I can turn it off for you guys. This one actually works just fine. Just don't use it as much, especially with the new like subscriptions and like Spotify or Apple Music. Makes life much easier finding songs, although I do have a big library of songs. But yeah, I mean, it's such a nice thing to have anyway, just to keep. I believe it's in lock. Yeah, I think it's dead, but as you see, yeah, it needs a new charge, as you can see there. But yeah, both of them work just fine, and I like to keep them, to be honest. Just especially this one here is just nice to have, because it's not as scratched up. And I do have another one. I just leave it in the car. I have my songs in it, and I leave it in the car just plugged in all the time. Whenever I don't know, I feel like listening to old songs or something like that I have in my library, I just pop it in and see it there. Now this one here is the 1st generation iPod Touch. As you can see, it's very old and it's very scratched up, and it's 8 gigabytes here. This one is running, I believe, iOS 3.1 or something. So if I go to general over here, if I go to about, so you can see it's iOS 3.1, which is a very early version of iOS. Now we're sitting at iOS 13, so that's 10 generations of iOS. It still works fine, really, other than the battery being sort of bad. Other than that, like, as you can see, it's kind of smooth, so if I put music in it or something like that, it should work just fine. But iOS 3 really is very limited. I think it was the first time they actually had the App Store in iOS in general. So yeah, that's a nice throwback here. Just gonna go to the next one. Sorry, I'm just gonna go a little bit fast because I do have about 20 phones, 25 phones. So to just make this as short as possible. This one here is the 4th gen iPod. The first time they put a camera in an iPod, as you can see there. I mean, it's not the greatest camera. I believe it's less than a megapixel. Shoots video in HD, and this one is, I think it's dead. Yeah, it still works just fine. It's just the battery is really bad on this one. It's running iOS 4. Fortunately, I would have shown you, but the battery is dead. And I charged it, but it doesn't keep any charge. It's very old. It's about 7-8 years old, and Apple don't really fix the batteries on old devices like this one. For example, even if I wanted to take it there and hey, like, just change the battery for me, they'll just like, they tell me like, we don't, they consider them not antique, but they consider them like old devices, like they're not fixable basically. At any rate, let's move on to the next one. I have, oh, it turned on. Let's just see here. So as you can see, it's running iOS 4 as well, but this one has a wallpaper in the background because the processor can handle it. If I go to general here, and about, as you can see, this is a 32 gigabyte iPod. It's actually really nice. Running iOS 4.3.5. I believe that it can be updated to iOS 6, but I'm not gonna update it. I don't use it, and I like to keep it as like the firmware as old as possible, since I don't use them. I like to keep them for, you know, records basically. I do have two iPhones here. Now we're starting with the phones. Two iPhone 3GS. As you can see, the 3G. As you can see with the iPhone 3G, the back gets really scratched up. It's plastic, it's glossy, and well, from use they get really banged up. This one of them was mine, one of them was a gift, because one of my friends had it on once, like, do you want it? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll have it. One of them doesn't work. I have to replace the battery in it, but this one works just fine. I'll just show you what iOS version it's running. Still, they're all running old version of iOS, because this one here, I think it's running iOS 4 as well. Yeah, iOS 4.1. This one is a 16 gigabyte iPhone 3G. I keep saying 3GS. And yeah, let's go for the next iPhone. It's gonna be iPhone 3G. Now this one here is a new iPhone 3G. So basically I bought it new. It didn't have any packaging, but it's basically brand new. As you can see, there's literally no scratches, nothing on the chassis, not like the other ones. But the only thing, it didn't have any packaging, unfortunately. The reason I bought this like new, like in such a good condition, not only like just to keep for me, believe it or not, like about in 2009, I believe, it was iPhone 3GS was my first iPhone like that I ever owned. And it was started like the thing for me, starting like technology, liking technology, or liking phones in general. So yeah, this one was a very dear phone to my heart. Obviously it was jailbroken at the time. It was not like I believe it was a AT&T, and my network wasn't AT&T, so you had to basically jailbreak it to make it work. Yeah, so this one is running iOS 6.1.6, and it's 16 gigabyte of memory. Mine at the time was 32 gigabyte. I believe the 3GS, the maximum capacity you can get was 32. So yeah, it's the iPhone 3GS here, and let's move on. Now this one is an iPhone 4. As if you can not tell, you can always tell a difference between an iPhone 4 and an iPhone 4S is the top part here. So as you can see, the iPhone 4 has a strip of the antenna, which started the antenna gate at the time. On the 4S, they fixed it, so they removed the antenna from here. What happened is basically when you hold the phone like this, you would lose the signal. So it was a big scandal at the time when this phone came out. Obviously, it's a new design from Apple. As you can see, it's stainless steel sides and glass back, glass front. It's really nice, and the proof that it is nice, Apple is using the same design as in their new iPhone 11 Pro, right? So they're using stainless steel and glass sandwiches, basically. This one here does not work. It has iOS 5. So what happened is it had a black shell on it, so it was very messed up. So I changed the shell and I put it in a new shell. This one, I had this one here, so I put this one and it stopped working. Now the touch doesn't work. So if anyone knows or can help me with that, like, I know it's not the display because I put in another motherboard and it works just fine. So it's just this motherboard for some reason the touch stopped working. So if anyone has an idea how to fix that, I would love to hear from you, because again, these phones are so old, you can't even take them to Apple. And even if you do, they'll let you, like, let's say for example, update, which in this case I don't want to update. This is an iPhone 4 running iOS 5. I'd say it's a very rare iPhone. It's very hard to find these, especially when you cannot really downgrade iOS. Okay, and this one is the iPhone 4S. So this one here, I believe was one of my first iPhones that I started tinkering with. So it wasn't working at the beginning. I had to like change some things, like some of the components inside, like the battery, the charging port over here. And as you can see here, the case is not in best condition. There's like this chip over here, it's losing like, and I couldn't find, I just need to find a back glass as well that's shattered. Again, this gives you an idea how iPhones in general, they used to be, most of them will have a broken glass back, because I mean, it's glass, drop it once and it's gonna break. But yeah, this one here is running iOS 6 as well. Obviously iPhone 4S can go up to iOS 9, but I'm not gonna update it, again, only because I don't use it, and iOS 9 is a very horrible experience on iPhone 4S. If you ever owned an iPhone 4S and updated to the latest version, you'll know what I'm talking about. This one is an 8 gigabyte too, so it's not a whole lot of storage either. Basically, once you update to iOS 9, it's unusable. Now, this one here, this one is a sealed iPhone 5, right? So it hasn't been opened yet. And I can show you the other side. There's an IMEI number on it, but this one hasn't been opened yet, and it's basically new. As you can see, it's running iOS 6. This one I will do another video on, and I'll unbox it, and I will basically do a throwback video on this iPhone 5. Actually, I love the iPhone 5 design. It's one of the best designs you can have, and they continued with the iPhone 5S over here. So the 5S, now you can see it's a modern design, basically the same as the SE. This one is a little bit banged up, but it's all good. It works just fine. And this one, I believe it's running iOS 12. So it's the latest version of iOS. Yep, 12.4. Again, very nice iPhone. I mean, some people are still using these till this day. Not very fun experience if you ask me, because most of them will have a very bad battery life. I work in let's say maintenance. I used to work in phone maintenance, and a lot of people come in with dead batteries or some issues with the battery, like the battery doesn't charge, or it charges and loses the charge really fast. So yeah, but it's really still a good phone, one of the best phones that Apple invented, to be honest. Now, I believe we're done with iPhones, so let's start with Android. Yeah, to be honest, I love Android more. Not just I have an iPhone myself. I use an iPhone. They're kind of good, but Android in terms of customizability and the operating system itself, it's more open. You can actually do more things on it. This one here, this was a phone when it came out. I really, really wanted one. Unfortunately, it was such a limited, it wasn't something you can buy right away. Like, it's not something you have everywhere in the world. And they're called the Galaxy Nexus. So this one, I believe, was the third Nexus device. So if you don't know what Nexus devices are, they're basically a Google version of Android. So Google used to have, let's say, other companies build their phones before the Pixel. This one here, for example, is the third generation of Nexus. Nexus devices are very well known, very, very popular, and they're very, really, at the time, they were very cheap as well too, right? They're running vanilla version of Android, and as you can see in this one here, this one is running, I believe, KitKat, if I'm not mistaken. Scroll down, about phone. This one here is Android, Jelly Bean. All right, so this one is running Jelly Bean. As you can see, it's cool. You can have these things. Fortunately, they change Android a lot. I mean, to be honest, it's going for the good. Everything, every day, when you use Android, or iOS for that matter, it's just more convenient. As you can see, the older phones are kind of slow. They're not usable these days. So if you have a 10-year-old phone, old phone like this one, is basically unusable. And one of my favorite Nexus devices is coming up. It's this one. Guys, you have no idea how much this phone is beautiful. This one is made by LG. It's Nexus. It's called the Nexus 4. It's made by LG, and it's just gorgeous. I mean, the back on this one, this had a swollen battery. I had to replace the battery on it, which wasn't really that hard, to be honest, and it was really not costly as well. I think it cost me like 15 bucks just to replace the battery. As you can see, like, it's amazing, like how it's built. I love this like phone, this design. I wish like Google really bring it back, like this. I don't know if you can see it in the camera. It has like a starlight effect where it actually changes and with the light. Again, one of the classics here. I believe this one is running Android 5, which is in this case Android 5.1 Lollipop. So like, this is so cool, such a throwback. This is Lollipop here. And if you have the Nexus 4, to be honest, you mostly can download any new application right now. That's the nice thing about Android. Even though the operating system is old, the application in the Play Store they still support it. So it doesn't really matter if it's not really like, if it's an older software. This is the excuse me, this is the Nexus 5. I mean, this one is banged up for sure, but it works fine. And it's a Nexus. Again, all Nexus, as you can see, so it's very smooth, although it's very old. Like, excuse the sound, this is my Galaxy S2 telling me it's about to die. So this one is running, I believe, yep, version 6 of Android. This is Marshmallow. My friend had this phone for the longest time. I believe like 2 years ago he bought a new phone. But yeah, you can imagine, like, up till 2 years this phone was very usable. I mean, if you're in a pinch, this phone is still usable now, to be honest. Like, I don't see why not. I mean, don't mind my phone. My phone has a cracked screen, but in general, it's a really nice phone. It's still made by LG. And from there, obviously, there's more Nexus devices I just don't have in my collection. Hopefully, in the coming videos, I will give you an update on my collection here. Now, this one here, now we'll start with Samsung. Samsung was my second passion. So I loved iPhones and I love Samsung phones. I had like I switch between left to right. So I go Samsung or go iPhone. So as you can see here, this one is the S1. That's the first Galaxy. This device is a champion. It's running Android 2.33. This is, I believe it's Froyo. Oh, sorry, it's Gingerbread. So it's running Android Gingerbread. I used to like show you this creepy picture. But yeah, it has an AMOLED 4-inch screen. And at the time when the iPhones, like, if you compare it with the iPhone that was competing with, I believe it was the 3GS, if I'm not mistaken. Like, it's a bigger screen. Obviously this phone froze. It's a bigger screen, and it looks much nicer as well. Like, it's I mean, obviously, as you can see, the iPhone is very usable, while this one is currently like unresponsive and stuff like that. Not because of the phone is bad, really. It's just how Apple optimizes their devices. As you can see, the iPhone would have a 3.5 screen, while this one has a 4-inch screen, so it's much noticeably bigger. And I don't know what's doing. It's kind of possessed, but yeah, this one is the S1. By the way, guys, if you wanna like see any phone individually, like a longer review, just let me know in the comments and I'll happily do it for you. This one is the S2. This one was my second phone, I believe, after I got, actually, sorry, my third phone. I think I got the iPhone 5 and I switched to Android at that point. The S2 was one of the best devices you can get at that time. Had an amazing screen. This screen at the time, believe it or not, was very big. This one was 4.3. I know it sounds funny now because most of our phones are like 6.5 or whatever. But this was massive at the time because, again, compared to an iPhone had a 4-inch screen or 3.5, right? It has an AMOLED screen. It's really nice, and I really loved using it. Has an 8-megapixel camera. I mean, cameras at the time, they were okay. They were not great. I mean, right now I'm shooting my video with my iPhone. You couldn't really do that at the time because the picture quality will be like really horrendous, to be honest. And from the S2, Samsung decided to go on a new design, really. So that would be the S3. I still remember the ads for it. It had like a pebble design or something like that, and they just basically said like, oh hey, this is a human, this is designed for human. I don't know if you guys remember it, but it says like, oh, it's designed for human. And the S3 was very, I believe it was a very popular device. Like as you can see here, it's very fluid, very nice screen. This is 4.7 inches, 4.8 inches actually. So this is when the phone actually started to get bigger. Like they got bigger because people are using their phone more and more for like more entertainment and stuff like that. And Samsung wanted to be well, basically Samsung pushed the whole industry to a bigger phone with their phones, and everybody followed, to be honest. Innovation always comes from different companies, and sometimes it helps. The competition, the healthy competition, always helps. Samsung, I believe the S3 was one of the first phones to have a very good camera as well. Now I don't have the S4, but I do have the S4 mini, which look exactly the same. As you can see, the S4 had the exactly same design. This one is slightly chipped from here. Still works fine though. And with the S4, Samsung still had the pebble design, but it's still cut down on it. As you can see, Samsung is using plastic like there is no tomorrow. Everything is made from plastic from this phone. Removable back, removable battery, plastic like bezels, basically plastic everywhere. While Apple was, well, most like Apple phones at the time, I mean the S4 time, I believe it was the iPhone 5, so you can see it's like aluminum and glass. So Samsung was not catching up at that point. I believe it's until the Galaxy S6, then they started making premium phones. But at the time, the S4 was a really cool device. I didn't have the S4 for long, but I did buy the S5, which is this device here. The S5 had the fingerprint scanner, as you can see. I mean, it hardly works. And this one here is running Android. Let's see what Android is running. 4.4 KitKat. Sad, right? This phone is newer than this phone, and this phone has a newer version. Why? Because this one is a Galaxy Nexus. This one is a Nexus device, which the operating system comes from Google, while this one is from Samsung. This was Samsung's main issue. Basically, updates. You get one update if you're lucky, or none, to be honest, for their devices. What they end up doing is my next device here. They update the whole device. You do get a newer system. So this is the S5 New, or Neo, or whatever. So it's exactly the same. So if I put them together, they're twins. But this one is the newer version from the S5. At the time when this came out, this was the cheaper version. Like, it was not a flagship, it was just a mid-range phone at the time when it came out. And as you can see here, the operating system looks very different. And if I go here, as you can see, software information, it's running Android 7. Massive jump, although this phone came out a year after this phone. It came out with the iPhone 6, S6. But I guess this is how Samsung makes money, making new phones every year. Like, they have a lot of phones, and I got this phone at the time. Like, it's the Galaxy A5 27. Guys, and this one here, I love this sound. This one here is the Sony Ericsson Arc. As you can see, this came out at the same time the Galaxy S2 came out. And at the time, Sony was like really into phones. Not like today, to be honest, which is unfortunate. So this was a time where Sony and Ericsson were making phones as one company. So this one here, it's it's really nice at the time, and I really like it. And I don't know, for some reason, this phone, although it's the same age as the S2, it seems much smoother. I mean, Sony, like the Sony UI on top of it, it's just basically a stock Android. That's the nice thing about Sony. They don't really like bury the phone in a lot of layers of like customization, like what Samsung does here. It's just this is the only Sony phone I have, which is unfortunate. Hopefully I'll get the Z series soon. But yeah, this one is the Sony Arc. And last but not least, I do have a couple of Blackberries. I have the Blackberry Bold here. As you can see, I don't know if it works or not. I mean, I charged it and it was on. Oh, yep, it works. This was the last ditch from Blackberry basically to come to the smartphone business. As you can see, it's not working right. Unlock. Why do you unlock it? I do not know how to unlock you, my friend. Anyway, it's the Blackberry Bold. Now, this one here, is the Blackberry Z30. That was basically, so Blackberry did go into the touch screen smartphone, but it was too late, to be honest. By this point, Samsung, LG, Sony, even Google, they have like established their own Android was really picking up, and Blackberry decided not to go with Android, and they decided to run their own platform. But this is something I want to show you. Like, this is really cool. So if you swipe from the bottom, you can see like how the wallpaper there like shines. I thought that was really cool, something to show you guys. It's running Blackberry OS. Wasn't really good. I mean, after a couple of updates, they did gave it like Android support, but it was too late and people didn't really buy them. And I believe after this, I think Blackberry only made the Prev after this phone, and then they just stopped making phones afterwards, and then they got sold to another company. So yeah, just a throwback here. That should be all, guys. And again, thank you for I know it was a long video, but thank you for sticking up and seeing the phones. If you have any other questions, just let me know, and I'll be more than happy to help you guys or answer your questions. It's been fun. See you soon in the next video.